This is Suspicious Minds with Wade Durbin and Burl Tuttle. So we're here. We're in it. We're in it right now. This is it. This is the
this
show.
is it.
Yeah. It kind of snuck up on us.
Yeah. Well, I guess introductions are in order. Welcome to Suspicious Minds, the only Elvis podcast as far as I'm aware. My name is Wade.
I'm Burl.
We're two guys who like to talk about Elvis.
Yeah, absolutely. We like to talk about him, and then we sometimes stray from the Elvis talk into other stuff, which is fine. But today we are gonna dig into something that I think was near and dear to Elvis. I think he spent a lot of time with this. He developed some skills. He used those skills on stage. He opened up his own martial arts institute. What was it? The Tennessee Karate Institute. So we're talking about Elvis and karate.
Yes. Welcome to the karate episode.
Yeah, we're in it.
Yeah. And it's already started.
Yeah, I can't believe it.
So Elvis first learned about martial arts in his army days. He was stationed in Germany. He learned about karate through a gentleman by the name of Jürgen Seidel.
I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know.
Yeah. I've never heard it spoken out loud, so I'm just guessing at it.
Or maybe you're not supposed to say it out loud.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, or maybe you just whisper it. But he was a German Shotokan stylist. And Elvis, like everything in his life, got really, really into it. I believe that Elvis was naturally attracted to karate and advanced fighting styles just because he was sort of a kid who got picked on a lot growing up. This is like the origin story for a lot of martial artists, and just decided he wanted like a fighting edge should it come up again. Obviously, it never did after Elvis was famous because he had a goon squad about 15 deep. But just in case you defeat all 15 of the goons, your final boss would be Elvis, who presumably would come at you with, 8th degree black belt stylings.
And if that failed, he had a gun in his boot.
At least one gun on him at all times.
Yeah.
So
with belts and suspenders.
Yes.
So was that standard training? Do you know? Was that just his army training? Was that standard at the time?
Oh, I can't imagine. And in fact, I believe, I wasn't around back then, obviously, but karate was very much an exotic kind of mysterious discipline in the late 50s. Not very well known, definitely not a part of mainstream Western culture, of course. Obviously in Japan or whatever, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably very popular in the Asian cultures, but not so much in the United States unless you're aware of those things.
Well,
but
right.
But for a guy from Memphis, Tennessee, who had to have seemed like, what in the hell is this stuff?
It's likely that he'd never heard of it before he got into the army.
Yeah, true. Very true. Which is weird to think that was a world that you didn't know the word karate.
Yeah, it's just like American servicemen bringing the idea of pizza home with them from World War II.
What was here? What did we have before the... what is the great thing everybody wants to go back to? There was no karate. There was no pizza. There wasn't anything here.
Boiled potatoes and hamburger steaks. I don't know.
Yeah. But, yeah, no exotic. Did we even have mayonnaise yet? I don't think that had been invented. Not here. That was all French. Do we have French people here then? I don't think so. No. I think French
people were invented in 1963.
Yep. That sounds about right.
If my math checks out. But so Elvis, he brings karate, just this obsession with it, back to the States. And by Elvis's accounts, I've listened to a couple of recordings, mainly like stage raps, where he claims that he practiced karate every day of his life from 2 to 6 hours a day, which I find it very hard to believe. I can't imagine Elvis really doing anything for 6 hours a day, like ever.
Well, he might have just said 2 to 6 hours a day for 3 weeks. And
yeah.
I got it. I've nailed this. But it seems more than what you would think he'd actually be doing. And you're talking about the 1960s. He was on a movie set all day, every day for the 1960s. The entire decade.
And often when he was on movie sets, when he wasn't on camera and had downtime, he was running karate drills with his boys and a lot of times, by all accounts, trying to teach his co-stars karate moves.
Yeah.
Which, on the set of Kid Galahad, is a 1963 film, I believe, where he plays a boxer.
Yeah.
His co-star was Charles Bronson, who, as I understand, was none too impressed with this pop star throwing karate kicks all the time. As you could well imagine.
I can imagine. But the weird thing is that Chuck Bronson got into the martial arts a little bit later, though. And then he was the spokesperson for High Karate.
I think it's more accurate that, martial arts got into Charles Bronson.
That's probably true. That's probably exactly probably how that happened.
Because that guy wouldn't budge an inch.
No.
So Elvis's karate obsession, it was just mainly something that he would talk about in the rare interview. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a 4th degree black belt. Now I'm a 5th degree black belt. And there's a lot of dispute of how legitimate any of these belts and levels that he reached.
Well, but he did legitimately study with, it's Ed Parker, right? Like that's
Sure.
And he met him like at some demonstration like early 60s in California, studied under him. And Ed Parker had he had several schools throughout the country and where he taught. He was pretty legit, but I do know that there is the account of him getting, I believe, his 7th degree black belt. And after getting that, he gave whoever, I don't know who he was studying under to get that, but gave that person a Cadillac. Would it have been, was it Kang? Yeah, I think it would have been Kang Ree. He gave him a Cadillac.
Right.
He got a 7th degree black belt. I don't know. For a Cadillac, I'd give somebody a 7th degree black belt.
Yeah. And also, as I understand it, Elvis became disillusioned when he gave Kang Ree really a ton of money to build a new karate studio, and Kang Ree ended up using the money to build a house for himself. And Kang Ree, his explanation was, there will be karate in this house.
Wow. What a charmer. I like it. That's great reasoning.
But that's a trap that everybody falls into being around Elvis. It's just basically everyone's jockeying for access and for favors. And did Elvis legitimately earn any of these belts? And it's tough to say because most of the footage that exists of Elvis practicing karate is his New Gladiators project from 1974, that footage, which the original pitch was that Elvis, in this chance encounter, met the screenwriter who pitched this idea to Elvis, unsolicited, that could be your comeback. You're interested in karate, this could be your comeback. And so let's write a narrative film where Elvis was to play like an ex-CIA agent who runs a karate studio and his friend gets killed by drug dealers. Very standard stuff. And Elvis was interested in this pitch for, I don't know, maybe a few days, but got a little cool on it. But what he really wanted to do was to narrate a documentary about the world of martial arts. So he hires these people, rents a bunch of camera equipment, buys a bunch of film stock, and basically all that came of it was they spent a couple days at one of the Ed Parker studios in Memphis. And you've seen some of the footage. Yeah,
I've seen it. I've watched through it a couple of times. It's a little sleepy. What it reminds me of is what I think you and I would refer to as party karate.
Yeah, a lot of it seems to be Elvis's sparring partners being completely motionless while Elvis is just demonstrating all these techniques on someone who's just standing there. And if this was the extent of Elvis's karate career, if this is all he did, I don't even know what this is exactly and it strikes me as it probably would have been a little bit infuriating to be a legitimate martial arts student there at the time and just, who is this joker and what is he even talking about?
But I think that's the thing that just shifted Bruce Lee for a little bit. I know this is the reason he started his style, which was because most of what martial arts was to him, this is what I remember, little bit that I read, is that it just winds up being almost like a dance routine. You have to remember this move to this move. There's these 15 moves in a row and you have to do them. And then that's this cycle. And to watch him stand in front of Red West and slow motion, pretend to gouge his eyes out. I don't know, who's going to just stand there The one thing that they do, and I think they have a lot of this joke in there, is the idea of if somebody's pointing a gun at you from 10 feet away, the only thing you do is pray. Like, I think they do that a couple of times in that footage, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think it goes to maybe where his stance is with karate. Like, karate's great. Guns are better.
Beats the hell out of karate.
It sure does. It does beat the hell out of karate.
Yeah. Speaking of Red West, there's a lot of footage in the New Gladiators project where Elvis is sparring with Red. And Red, bless his heart, his reactions to everything that Elvis is doing, he's earning his money, basically. He's got this kind of...
Yeah, he knows where his bread gets buttered.
Red is spending the whole time with this bug-eyed look and shaking his head in disbelief as if to say, oh man, I can't even believe how much Elvis is kicking my ass. This is amazing.
Yeah, he did how many movies with Elvis? How many times did he get beat up by Elvis in the movie?
Dozens, I'm sure.
Yeah, so he knew what he was doing there. So he had a decade of experience of, oh man, this guy's beating me up kind of expressions.
Right. So, whereas both me and you know, like the real Red West, he's the kind of guy who would throw a paper bag over his head and walk through a plate glass window and then like stab everybody in the room. He's just like that kind of guy.
And probably did a couple times.
Right.
So what I feel is that he obviously studied karate. I don't know.
He didn't not study karate.
But how effective... Now, you've done a little bit of that, a little bit of the martial arts, haven't you?
I'm afraid I need mine brushed up a little bit. But
what you saw, what's your take on it?
Well, let's see. This is 2020. When my children were born, I kind of fell off on this. But I've studied Muay Thai for 15 years. And any similarities between what's going on in that gym as compared to what goes on that I've experienced, purely coincidental. And it's just, first and foremost, something that any novice martial artist will notice in the New Gladiators footage is that Elvis is wearing boots on the mat.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Which is just whatever, man. If you're like funding the project and let's maybe say it's your school or whatever and you're writing the rules, that's one thing. It's just one of those things that's not done. I have a theory as to why this was happening. If you've read any of the Elvis biographies, Elvis in a kind of panic to score like prescription drugs from shady doctors would stab himself in the foot and then go to a doctor's house like late at night, like, pardon me, doctor, my name is Elvis Presley. I have a wound in this foot and I need some sort of painkillers. And doctors would be only too happy to provide that. I don't want to tell stories outside of school or anything, but
do you think it's that, or do you think he was just in between pedicures and he was just like, man, I can't. We know how his penchant for wearing like a turban when his hair wasn't like on point. He just had some nasty toes. Didn't want people seeing him.
Or possibly he was in between showers, or maybe his Swedish bath pills weren't fully activated, which that could be a whole other episode, the Swedish bath pills.
Yeah, that will be one, because if we go off on this tangent, it'll derail everything we're talking about.
Yeah, we'll circle back around to that one.
Yeah, put a pin in that. Put a pin in it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird that he would wear... But he also had this special gi that, the special designed. That was that Bill Ballou that made those for him.
Oh, sure. The designer of his stage outfits, which it closely resembles one of his stage outfits. And yeah, that's another thing that doesn't feel necessarily very martial arts to me. This kind of gilded karate gi with accents and just patches that don't necessarily mean anything. And also, in all the footage, Elvis is wearing, which appears to be a collared shirt underneath his gi.
Yeah, looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, whatever that's all about, I don't know.
He didn't like his neck, remember? That's why he always had like the high collared stuff. He thought he had a skinny little neck.
He's got a chicken neck.
Chicken neck, yep. So I guess we've covered what we really want to know is... matching him up against other celebrities, how we think he would fare. I think that's really, when you get it down to the brass tacks, who could Elvis beat up? Who do we think he could beat up with his karate?
And that's a real shame, is that Elvis spent the entire back half of his life practicing karate. And to my knowledge, I don't know, I've read a lot of books. I don't know if I've read every book about Elvis, but I've never read in a single one any account of an actual physical confrontation. So if Elvis could actually beat somebody up, I don't know. It's all speculation, but that's what we're here to do.
Yep.
So I have a list of 3 notable celebrities. You have a list of 3 notable celebrities.
Yep.
Do you want to ping pong back and forth, and we'll sort it out here?
Yeah, you can start. And yeah, because I want to hear what you got. I have an idea. We may have talked notes beforehand, but
sure.
You go ahead and start, and then I'll take one.
Okay, first up for my fantasy karate match between Elvis and another celebrity, Mr. Excitement himself, Jackie Wilson, who was a very good friend of Elvis, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Elvis was a big fan of his, loved his singing, loved his big hits. Elvis didn't get out very much, but when Jackie Wilson was playing anywhere around, he'd go check him out. So they knew each other, and also Jackie Wilson, early in his career, he was a boxer.
Okay.
So, like a legitimate fighter. Anyway, the tale of the tape says that Jackie Wilson, he was 5'8" and 140 pounds and fought as a super lightweight. So it's tough because Jackie Wilson was a guy who legitimately spent some time in the ring. Mm-hmm. But if we're talking like 5'8", 140 pounds, if we're going by Elvis being 6 foot, and what would you say? Averaging
180. I don't know, it depends. In the 60s 180, 190 maybe, I don't know.
Sure. 50s Elvis probably 175. 60s Elvis probably 185. 70s Elvis 200.
Every bit of that. Right, towards the end probably a little bit more than that, but here's the thing, this goes back to what we said. We know Jackie Wilson did some fighting, and there's no proof that, although we've seen the sparring in the video, mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah, it would be tough just because he is tiny. He's probably pretty quick, too. And
very quick.
And everything that we saw in the video with Elvis, that's maybe 1/4 speed. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's how he always practiced. If that's how he always practiced, then ramping that up to actual fight speed, I think would be a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. Man, I might give a slight edge to the Lonely Teardrops.
And let me also say this: Jackie Wilson's professional record as a boxer was 2-8.
Okay, so maybe we'll just call it even. Yeah,
I don't know. I just think that if Elvis had been able to get a hold of him, he probably could have done some damage.
Yeah,
I just think Jackie would have eluded whatever attack Elvis had.
Yeah, and Jackie became a singer for a reason. Let's keep it that. Yeah,
it's true.
Yeah, he was a great boxer. We would have been talking about the great boxer Jackie Wilson. So yeah, I don't know. I might call that kind of even, but yeah, I think if Elvis could get a hand on him, then I'd give advantage Elvis.
Sure. Okay. Well, who do you got?
For my first one, and this is because I'm going 60s and actors, so I'm going Bill Shatner. Yeah, so Bill Shatner, now he's about 5'10", so he's closer in height. Mm-hmm. And hard to say the weight. I really couldn't take a guess, but I would say he's probably like 185, something like that.
Sure.
He's a barrel-chested guy.
Sure. Stocky, sturdy.
Now, I did a little bit of research. I know that Shatner did some boxing, so he's a boxer. He studied martial arts, but not for very long. He wasn't really into it. But I know he did some fencing and some acrobats. He studied a little bit of judo. But he studied with a guy named Tom Bleecker, who I don't know a lot about the guy, but I know he studied for about 1.5 years with him. In an interview, he even said, knowing a little bit about martial arts is like really dangerous. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It would be a tough matchup, but I think I might go Elvis here.
Yeah, I think with Shatner, he probably has this deep well of crazy he can pull from and throw something totally unexpected at Elvis. I could see that happening and stunning Elvis and overtaking him from there. But also William Shatner, he rides horses and lives the ranch life. That's tends to be rough and tumble. It seems like maybe Shatner could take punishment in a way that Elvis couldn't.
Elvis had horses. He rode horses
true.
on.
It's true.
And here's another thing, and I don't know if this is the pro or the con. Bill Shatner he's Canadian. Might be a little too polite to punch Elvis in the face.
Sure, maybe.
And this is no slight on Canadians, but it's,
sure.
I'm just saying that he'd be like, "Why are we getting in a fight? Why don't we hang out and chit chat? Solve this with words."
Sure. Let's share a bottle of wine and talk this out. Yeah.
So maybe a plate of
a
plate of poutine between us. Yeah.
And no one would feel like fighting after that.
No, it's nap time. It's nap time after that. But if it was later in the, I don't want to take a swipe at Shatner. I'm going to say it and then I'll decide if I'm going to leave this in. So another thing about Shatner, though, I think is if we put it into the 70s, I think he might be a little wary about getting his toupee knocked off. So I think
right.
So he might just run for the hills. He might just take off at any provocation, get on his horse and ride out of there.
But I guess you're not aware that even from season 1 of Star Trek, that was a toupee.
Was it for sure?
Yeah.
It's like finding out that about Connery. Like I always figured he got one around Thunderball, but no, first one, like every single one of them, he had a toupee.
Also another one that may surprise you from the very first Superman movie, Christopher Reeve, toupee.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Not necessarily like a full wig prosthetic. He had some help.
Okay. I didn't know that.
He had a piece. So William Shatner, I would agree. I would probably give Elvis the slight advantage.
Yeah, slight advantage at E.
In that battle.
So we'll tally these up at the end. So now who would your second matchup be?
This will be a fun one from the life of Elvis. Colonel Tom Parker.
Okay. I could see that. Now, do we know? Does he I guess he's just rough and tumble guy.
Lived the carny life, so you can't imagine that he lived it completely fisticuffs free his entire life.
Right, for sure.
Colonel Tom Parker, 6 feet tall. It's impossible to say exactly how much he weighed, but most people speculate 300 plus. Mm-hmm. The way that I call this one, it's basically Batman versus Superman. Because, you were to say, oh, well, Elvis or Superman, though, obviously he would win. There's no way that this guy would overtake him. But Colonel Tom Parker, in a very Batman kind of way, seems to be calculating and that he would not enter into this conflict without a plan for victory.
Yeah, for sure.
And also a sense of ruthlessness. While I am absolutely not going to lose this, in a way that Elvis would definitely couldn't help but to hold back in fighting Colonel Tom Parker. He couldn't even fire the guy after all the completely awful business decisions he made.
Yeah, and I think Parker he'd go for the face. He'd go for the moneymaker immediately.
Or the eyes.
Or the eyes, yeah.
Yeah.
He'd just go right for him. Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know. You might give an edge Parker there. Elvis obviously has the youth, and he has the fitness.
The stamina.
And the stamina. But I bet Colonel Parker's got some sort of weapon on him. Obviously, Elvis did too, but probably something hidden, like a knife on him or some sort of club, something like a blackjack. I bet that guy's got a blackjack in his pocket.
Sure. Or like a stiletto. It's just the thing is, Elvis would have the integrity to agree to no weapons in this fight and put down his Derringer and put down his 9mm or whatever he's carrying on him. But Colonel Tom Parker would agree to that, but also have a stashed weapon that nobody knew about. I could see that.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't be, it wouldn't be a fair fight in any, conventional sense.
He would have gone out beforehand and dug a pit and put spikes in it so he could push it and then covered it with sticks and dirt and stuff. Yeah.
Right.
That seems very Tom Parker.
Right.
I'm sorry, Colonel Tom Parker.
Sure. I'm doing air quotes when you say Colonel.
I'll make a note. We'll put it in the metadata that you're doing that.
Sure.
So this will be the air quotes episode. So this will be your first use of those in episode 2. So should we move on?
Yeah.
I know who I'll go with. So the next one, because this would be kind of a fun matchup too, James Coburn.
Okay.
So James Coburn, he's about 6'2". Now the weight, I don't know, but he's pretty lanky. So I'm going to go probably about 180, maybe 175, 180.
Sure.
In his heyday. And I know he was in the Army. I don't think he was in combat or anything like that. So he probably had some training. But he studied with Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
And by all accounts, like legit trained with Bruce Lee. There is a story that James Coburn at a Hollywood party, and this is during the Green Hornet era. So at a party, he's talking to Bruce Lee about the 1-inch punch. He's like, I don't believe you. And he's like, you stand up, I'll show you the 1-inch punch. And he's like, you're going to want to put a pillow in front of you. So they got this big pillow, and Bruce Lee does the 1-inch punch on James Coburn, knocks him over a chair and onto the floor. And James Coburn gets up, not mad in the least, and's like, okay, I want you to train me. And they started after that. He was a pallbearer for Bruce Lee when he died. But yeah, apparently studied quite intensely. So,
But Burl, you know what that was?
What's that?
That was party karate.
that their meeting was party karate.
Sure.
Yeah, I know. It's weird. It's weird that Bruce Lee was doing party karate. The guy who didn't need to do it at all.
No, not at all.
I'll show these guys. Kung Fu. Yeah.
Or Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah, Jeet Kune Do was his thing. So the matchup with Elvis, I hate to say it, I think I'm going to go James Coburn here.
Yeah, I would go James Coburn. Just, he's got the reach. He's got the Bruce Lee training. Just seems to be more like a self-assured guy with less to prove than Elvis.
Right.
I think Elvis could probably get tripped up by that, trying to make it look pretty or show off to people and just completely lose in that regard. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'd have to give it to Coburn.
Yep. So right now the tally is, hold on, I have to write these down because I didn't. So we'd give him the edge over Shatner. We're giving, let's see, Jackie Wilson. We're saying a tie. Did we say that's a tie?
Yeah.
We're giving a slight edge to E.
Right.
Okay. So he's winning 2. And then these middle 2, I think, are both the contenders, going to the contenders. So I think James Coburn and Colonel Tom are both winning those. He's got to pull it out here in this last round. We gave him some softballs because we want him to come out on top. Obviously, this is about him. We don't want to be like who could beat him up, but
yeah. We don't want to do the definitive karate episode about Elvis and be like, well, most people could beat him up.
Exactly. Yeah. So your last one is Jean-Claude Van Damme. No.
David Lee Roth.
Ooh.
Yes.
Diamond Dave. Wow.
Yeah.
So now, is he into the martial arts? I know he's quite acrobatic.
Yeah. David Lee Roth is extensively trained in the martial arts. He's full 6 feet tall. Has always kept pretty fit his entire career. Very lean. And then sometimes kind of muscly, sometimes a little gaunt, but I would say fair warning era, he was pretty muscly. He can certainly pull off, roundhouse kicks and scissor kicks, and he's into the kicks. Maybe Taekwondo? I don't know what discipline David Lee Roth trained, but
he's also a rock climber, does the rock climbing.
For sure. Physical fitness is very important to David Lee Roth. I don't know. I would have to maybe.
Okay, but here's the thing. What era Elvis? What year? Are we saying 74 or we're going earlier with that?
Well, you couldn't really match up a 1974 Elvis with a 1974 David Lee Roth because David Lee Roth would have been just getting out of high school. That would have felt weird.
Well, but I don't know. I mean, why don't we do a mid 60s Elvis versus late 70s David Lee Roth?
Let's say 1965 Elvis. We're talking your Girl Happy, call back to the previous episode, or your, what was the other movie we were talking about, or we ended up not talking about? Tickle Me Elvis versus, let's say 1980 David Lee Roth, Women and Children First, David Lee Roth.
Sure. The thing is, right around 80, how deep were they into the booze and cocaine? Because I think it'd be pretty deep.
Extremely deep.
It'd be a couple nostrils deep.
Yeah. Which I don't know if that would necessarily be a disadvantage, though.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying it was necessarily a disadvantage. I was just curious. It's more like a stamina thing, though, and whose heart would go first.
Right.
But, I'm going to say I might call it a draw, like mid-60s Elvis. You know what? I might go David Lee Roth.
Yeah, but that's another thing, too. I also think that David Lee Roth, knowing who Elvis is, and I believe, though I've never read anything to this effect, I think that David Lee Roth considers Elvis like an influence in like frontman stuff, wild stage gear, and doing martial arts on stage and whatnot. That just feels like that was probably an influence at one point. I think David Lee Roth, his heart wouldn't be in it in a way that Elvis would just want to snuff out this young punk. This like long hair, wild man. It goes against everything that Elvis admired in people.
Yeah, okay, I could see that. So you're saying the awe factor alone, that is a weapon that we have not talked about. It might be like his secret martial art, and maybe the reason that he was a level 8 or 7th level or whatever black belts because of his awe factor a little bit.
Right.
So that has to be accounted for. So if you take that into account, I think Elvis wins that one. I think he wins that matchup.
Yeah, and I think David Lee Roth, like in the back of his head, would think that this would be a great story. Like, I fought Elvis and he kicked my ass.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a way that, like, Elvis wouldn't have reciprocated that. There's no way, like, this long-haired punk kicked my ass. I mean, I'll die in shame. But skill level to skill level, I would take David Lee Roth if it was just two people fighting. But since it's DLR and Elvis fighting, I would maybe go Elvis there.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, slight edge.
Slight edge. Mm-hmm.
All right. So I got my last one, and this is a little veering off, but I wanted a contemporary, and because I had 2 actors, so I wanted a musician, and I went Glenn Campbell. And I did this not knowing whether or not Glenn Campbell had ever studied martial arts or boxing or anything of that nature. And I was digging around, and I could find nothing about him doing anything. So I'm assuming no training. That's all I can assume.
But considering that Glenn Campbell spent a lot of his career as a studio musician, those types are very protective of their like hands and fingers naturally. So like fight training would be counterintuitive to like their entire career focus. Naturally so. It's I'm gonna punch a punching bag a few hundred times and run the risk of like busting a knuckle or So, like, you just wouldn't do it.
Yeah. This may be the softball we were looking for. But the thing is, they're about the same age. They're about the same height. I think Glenn Campbell's 6'1". He's born within a year or so of Elvis.
Both grew up, like, very poor backgrounds.
Yeah. I did it not knowing, but I thought, I'm sticking with this guy, but I think I'm going to have to go Elvis in this one, which is, it's not as much fun. But I literally thought, he'll have some training. He like everybody in the 60s was studying karate and stuff, but I couldn't find any evidence of it.
I think the dabbling in martial arts amongst celebrities is probably a lot more common today than it was in the 60s.
It was very new back then.
Especially, the world that Glenn Campbell operated in, like mainstream country, those guys, there's just no way.
Why would you spend money on learning a martial art when you could get yourself a little fishing boat? And get yourself some fish.
Sure. Yeah, just reading up a little bit about Glenn Campbell. He played on Beach Boys' Pet Sounds.
That's kind of awesome. I didn't know that.
And he was also the first replacement Brian when Brian freaked out and couldn't tour anymore.
Yeah.
And was eventually replaced with, who is it, Bruce Johnston?
Yeah, that I don't know.
But yeah, Glenn Campbell was like the first fill-in, which I think is interesting.
It's a pretty solid choice, though.
He was an all-around musician, just like whatever you needed.
Yeah, I guess whatever would pay the bills.
Banjo. He dabbled in a lot of stuff.
Sure. Sure. If it had strings on it, he'd play it.
Mm-hmm.
Good old Glenn Campbell. So
Yeah.
I think that those are all of our matchup. I think Elvis edges out. I think he loses 2. I think he ties 2. And I think he won 2. Is that what we came up with? Okay.
So
I didn't do a very good job of marking all that stuff. But
all of those listening at home can write their own notes and get back to us and let us know how it turned out.
yeah, and if there was someone that we didn't mention that you would have liked to see Elvis get in a fight with, keep it to yourself.
Oh, there's so much to tell about
good.
the world of Elvis and karate. I'm all in on Elvis Karate Volume 2 for an episode.
Yeah, and I am, of course, kidding. Yeah, that would be a fun one. Have people write in who they would like to see matched up, and then we could discuss those people, somebody we may have overlooked.
Send in those cards and letters, people.
Yeah.
Like Elvis versus Alice Cooper. I don't know.
Yep, see? We don't know. We didn't do any research on this, so it could go either way right now.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So Elvis with the karate, man. And it's weird because it's such a predominant part of his persona. It was in a lot of stuff. It was in a lot of his movies. It was in the stage show. The one thing I will say is whether or not you think he was any good at it, he definitely had a great love for it. Mm-hmm. And that showed in a lot of things that he did.
And really, I believe that Elvis was instrumental in the mainstreaming of karate in the West.
Absolutely.
You just wouldn't shut up about it, and it was like in your face constantly, like his entire career, and his stage outfits were karate-ish, and he would do a lot of punching and kicking on stage, and a lot of times just halt shows in their entirety for 20 minutes at a time just to like monologue about martial arts, which I'm sure much to the chagrin of the paying audience, but it was something he felt very strongly about.
Absolutely. Yep. I don't know. I guess we can leave it at that. And man, I think we made it through this whole episode without either one of us doing an Elvis impersonation. So,
which I'd like to see that trend continue because I'm uncomfortable with that.
Maybe we'll try one out in a future episode once we're more comfortable with the idea of doing it. But there will be another episode, but we don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, we'll brainstorm something and get it knocked out here.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was fun. It was a fun chat, fun episode. And thanks for listening. And I have been Burl.
And I'm Wade.
All right. And we will catch you next time.
Peace out.